So welcome. What we're calling this is, I guess, part two. We did this OG panel session last year. It was a huge hit. I think probably the biggest, most well-recognized, commented thing that we've ever done. And so we're like, let's do it again. So we're calling this our Pioneers and Visionaries panel, and I'm just here to moderate. So we're going to start with Mark, and then we're going to kind of go this way. If you would just intro who you are for anyone that possibly doesn't know you, and what you've done in the past and what you're doing now.
Sure, Wes. I heard there's a lot of Canadians at the event, which is great. Which is great to see. My name is Mark Scott. I've been in managed services for 25 years as of this past March. Originally the founder of Enable. I apologize for the first 5 years of the product openly here right now. And then built the business up pretty significantly over till about 2006. And then moved across the aisle and actually started an MSP roll-up that ultimately we ended up acquiring about 12 MSPs over the course of time. Ended up merging with Chris Day's MSP called Fully Managed, and then we built that over the next few years to about 100 million and sold to one of the largest telcos in Canada called Telus. So then obviously had to stay doing that for a couple of years, and then I guess our third act is something called TopDown Ventures, which is a early stage venture capital firm focused on MSP software companies, enabling you guys obviously in security, next generation automation, etc. So. I think over the period of time, had basically the lens on all three areas of the business, and probably have hopefully some input on this panel today.
I would think so. Thank you, Mark.
Awesome.
Austin.
Hi, I'm Austin McCord, and I'm the Guinness World Record holder for the world's largest googly eyes. But in addition, that's actually true. But I started a company called Datto, which many of you are familiar with. And so that was a journey. And then have gotten involved in a company called Slide for various reasons. And that's been a new journey and an exciting one. And also helped out with Cork and Zorus a little bit. But my day job is I run a venture capital fund investing in really weird businesses.
I love it. We're going to get into a lot of that in just a bit. So stay tuned.
So if you have an MSP software company, talk to me. If you got everything else, talk to Austin, right, Austin?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That's perfect. David.
Well, I introduced myself to everyone this morning, and Wes was a little late, so I probably overexposed myself a little this morning. So everyone knows me. I'm one of the co-founders of ConnectWise, now CEO of CyberFOX.
I love it. So first question, David, I'm going to start with you, and then Austin and Mark, just jump in. Anything you want to add into the conversation. Sure. David, when you started ConnectWise all those years ago, did you ever envision the MSP space would be what it is today?
Oh, no. I mean, I guess for me, having a company with over 1,000 employees, I would never have wanted to do that. So, but it just happens, and these guys can tell you the same thing. I don't think any of us start out thinking we're going to have these large companies. I think we say, hey, we got a good idea. Let's see, if people agree, and the next thing you've got 500 employees. So I think, for me, it was just kind of an accidental entrepreneur type story.
Yeah, I mean, starting Datto, the primary reason is that I sucked in college and couldn't get a real job. But then had this idea, was this seems like a thing that I could do. I got to solder the first boxes together. Then realized that you sort of have this responsibility because you're like, oh my gosh, I actually sold data backup and I have to not lose this data and it has to work. And so you have a tremendous responsibility to deliver for your customers. And it was interesting that the MSP market found me, that I just created a website and was just buy this online. And eventually enough MSPs called and they're like, do you have a reseller program? And I was like, yeah, just call back in 4 hours. And made one up. And that, it turns out, was one of the best business decisions, or probably the best business decision I've ever made in my life, because it gave me clarity of market, and I realized I could, sell to these specific MSPs, and the MSPs didn't care that I was like a 22-year-old in a basement. They were just like, well, it works. And so that opened up a tremendous amount of opportunity. And then as far as like growing the business, I mean, the biggest thing there is just that whatever skills you have to get to one level, like, are completely non-applicable to get to the next level. And so it's like I started a company because I liked talking to computers and like working with my hands, and ended up with a job where I have to talk to humans instead. And like that was like really an unintended consequence. And so then you figure out like, how do I get good at that? And just like the process of, you know, dealing with like, okay, I have 10 people, now I have 25 people, oh my gosh, like I have 100 people. I don't even know everybody's name, that's also super weird that like, if any of your businesses have gotten big, that there's someone that spends most of the time they're awake working on like your dream, your baby, and you don't even know their name. And then you get to like 1,000 people and they're like, they get nervous when they see you in the elevator. And that's just a whole other thing. But yeah.
That's amazing. Mark, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the very early days of Enable, it was about really trying to fix this. Like it was just such a strange business model for me, like how VARs and system integrators made money, right? I mean, I actually, prior to starting Enable, I actually had an accounting firm that actually focused in tech companies. So basically, accounting by definition is an annuity business. We started doing, you know, pretty regular business consulting, and one of my biggest clients was a company called Nitro Microsystems in Ottawa, and basically looked at their business and said, like, what would it be like if we could actually start to, you know, annuitize that revenue, right, and move to more of a proactive monitoring at the very least. So kind of looking at, the way I've always looked at it is basically there's three important relationships that a small and medium-sized business has. Their accountant, their lawyer, and their IT person, right? I mean, and to think 25 years later, we're still sitting and MSP isn't regulated yet, right? Like we're not a self-regulating body, you know, similar to obviously those other two professions. So for me, you know, we kind of built, really the early days of Enable was building kind of this almost like a franchise system, business in a box, working with ConnectWise. Definitely, I still remember Arnie sits, you know, in the booth with Mike Cullen, with kind of our kind of SWAT team of sales folks, and then we created this role called partner development specialists. And it was just all about it was a massive industry, and for me, a massive opportunity. Like our value proposition was sitting with Bob the IT guy that has, you know, 50 trusted relationships, and Bob, what would your business look like 5 years from now if you could turn that into recurring revenue? And then basically had ROI calculators and stuff on how how that would work. So it was really selling a business system in a box. And I think even for all the roll up and again the financial engineering that's happened in the industry over the good, bad, and ugly in the industry, it still to this day is a personal service business, right? A relationship business that you all have individually, and obviously you're key lieutenants with your SMB customers. So did I think it'd be a $600 billion space 25 years later? Probably not. But I thought we bet pretty big, I think collectively, all the people on this stage on that we would be here in some shape or form as we are today. So, yeah.
I think that's awesome. I just want y'all to pause for a minute and think about, we have three founders from Enable, from Datto, ConnectWise up here, and all three of them have said the same thing. If I didn't see, who could have fathomed where we've gone as an industry, just starting. So let's go back to the humble beginnings. Austin, I want to start with you. Has there been a point in your Datto career that you felt like, we're just not going to make it? Or some kind of difficult stage?
All the time. I mean, like, I can think back to like driving home from work, and either it was like pure terror that we would like actually exist in a week, or like just true joy that it's like, oh my gosh, this is working. But like we had one cycle, and this is sort of like in the same time period when we did our first ever Black Friday sale. We sold a ton of units. Everybody was excited and was like, we had never done a promotion before. And then the credit card company was like, well, you can't have any of this money for 6 months because we think it's fraud because you've made so much money. And was like, okay, well, that's a problem because like we didn't have any funding, and it's like I kind of need this money to like pay for the parts to make the hardware that I like owe these people that I have to ship. And so I called my accountant, and he got all worked up about it. And he's like, don't worry, I'm going to fix this. And then, and this is like actually a really crazy story, but you said you wanted it spicy. So 4 hours later, I got a call. My accountant died of a heart attack. Yeah, that's real. And so then I went to the bank and I was like, well, you gotta like, can you help me with this? And then they wanted to talk to my accountant, and I was like, well, he's dead. And like,
Did you kill him?
yeah, they were like, yeah. So all of that actually happened. And like eventually like it took like absolutely begging with the bank, and I think like, I don't know, like my grandmother, I think I got to like help sign for like the credit card stuff that like if it didn't happen, they could come take my grandmother's house. Like it was just crazy. But yeah, so I thought like we definitely could have gone out of business there. Or there was like another time where like our product was really not working very well, and like my head of tech support like quit in a rage in the middle of the day to become a nurse, and like left and was like, I don't want to touch a computer ever again. And so like that was also like a pretty painful time.
David, how about you?
I can't match
What was the question again?
We'll get there. We'll get there.
I think for me, I remember when we did our first IT Nation, because I'm the CPA of the company, so I'm always kind of the cheapskate that's always watching the budget. And I remember we did our first IT Nation, and you know, I was complaining to Arnie. I was like, this is going to cost way too much. I mean, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? You know, and so I think we ended up losing like $300,000 on our first IT Nation. And Robin Robbins comes in there, and she's selling some type of marketing kit, you know, just a book, like a little binder book, for like $1,000 each. And she ended up getting 200 orders at our thing. So she walks out the door with 200,000. We just lost 250,000. So for me, it was one of those things like, why are we doing this? I was like really, really upset. But you know, from a standpoint of, you know, do we think we're going to make it? I think one of the concerns you always have, and I heard Austin saying it a little bit, you know, you actually have to save all this data, and it has to be up all the time, and it has to be available all the time. That's a little, it's a daunting task to be able to kind of make sure you build the infrastructures. And back in the day, we didn't necessarily, you know, Amazon didn't really exist when we first started rolling all this stuff together. You know, we had to kind of build it ourselves in like a rack space. So those were the tough times when you'd have outages, and you know, we'd have 40,000 people down, and you know, I'm front and center. You know, I'm the chief operating officer, so you know, when's it going to be up? You know, I got my brother coming down yelling at me. You know, so it's one of these things. He wants to reboot the computer, and back, you guys, some of them remember, rebooting the computer could take like an hour, right? And so you know, it's like, no, we don't want to reboot just unplug it, let's reboot it. You know, so. But I think those were some of, you know, you look back at those issues with fondness now to realize, oh, okay, and you know how to do it, and you know, as all of us are now doing it again. It's a lot easier the second time around, I can say that.
No doubt. Mark, how about you? A time that you guys thought you may not make it at Enable?
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, well, first and foremost, back in the early 2000s, I mean, good luck trying to go to a venture firm, go to investors. I think Gavin and I, my partner, Gavin Garbett, aka the Smiling Assassin, I call him, basically he was the fundraiser. I was the guy running the business. We raised almost 20 million in angel funding in those first couple of years, right? Like Ottawa is a hotbed of JD, you know, Nortel and JDS and obviously Cognos and a really good tech center. So, you know, I think for us, yeah, it was always like, it was, you know, lines of credit, mortgage on the house, like, you know, trying to build the business, while it's product, right? Like, I mean, our original product was built on Big Brother, right? Like a Linux open source project with a multi-tenant layer on top of it. So, I mean, if it isn't hard enough to run a software company as it is, like, go back 25 years ago of Linux open source, how that looked, right? So there was always challenges, I think, in those, probably the first 4 or 5 years, definitely. I think how the industry survived, really business guys starting some of the fundamental companies, right? Kaseya, or the foundational companies, Kaseya, Enable, ConnectWise, right? Weren't guys like Austin, right? Like technologists that obviously people like him started to come into the industry, like you were what, 07, 08,
Yeah,
07?
07.
Yeah, and basically probably, from a Datto perspective, had a clear lane into look at all this shitty technology that's running backup, right? Like, and again, solving a very
Had
specific.
that feeling multiple times.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so I think for the industry itself, like I remember, again, selling Enable to Gary Pika, right? Down at TGI Fridays, I think was the restaurant down in Philadelphia, and it was like he was partnered with Kaseya for desktop, us for network, and obviously ran ConnectWise. So think about that, right? Like those three companies, most MSPs had to use the three technologies back then, let alone backup and all. And we're bringing like enterprise tools in to try to fit into the square peg that was managed services. So I think that first decade, like I would say even the 2000s was definitely a ride, definitely building it. And then what was it, like 2011, along comes Microsoft Office 365, right? And everybody thought that's the end of managed services. So I mean, there's just a lot of there's a lot of inflection points, I think, as you go back and look, a couple of decades of MSP, of where individually we could have failed as companies, or more as an industry setbacks as well, right? Yep. The original RMM vendors was us, Oculan, and Silverback. Anybody know who Oculan is? Right? Like a phenomenal technology, actually. Guys out of Raleigh, North Carolina. So I mean, there's been definitely, to be still here today with some of these great brands that exist, right, in the industry is definitely a story in resilience, for sure.
Sure.
Well, I mean, it's that and solving a problem. Like MSP's problems haven't really, they exist. Like computers, for all the things that have changed, computers still suck.
Yeah.
Like that's why we're here, right? Like if they worked really well, this whole industry wouldn't exist.
And nobody reads the manuals on anything, right?
They don't give you an owner's manual, and if you're Google, they don't even write them.
Exactly.
They're like, you just figure it out.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, like it's sort of wild in that sense of just like technology has changed so much, but still is so broken.
Yeah.
And then the fact that creates like a persistent set of needs that support the entire MSP industry. And the more and more people get exposed and immersed in technology, the more and more they realize that it's shit and need an MSP to like help them make it work.
Yeah.
And like, Wi-Fi's been around for 20 years, and try to get mesh Wi-Fi to work with more than 3 APs, like it's not gonna happen. They sell lots of stuff, but it just doesn't work. And like that's easy stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's just crazy how bad tech is.
So I'm going to ask one last past question. Normally I like to ask a question to one of you in particular and let you answer it. This time I'm going to throw maybe a proverbial grenade over here in the middle and see which of you wants to pick it up and pull the pin. All right? How about that? So here's the question. I know when you build a company, it's your baby. It's your thing. You eat, breathe, live, sleep, you bleed that company. What is it like for you to be in this position you're in today and it's not your baby anymore?
I mean, I'm super curious their answers, but happy to share mine.
You go first.
Okay.
It'll be more entertaining, trust me.
So, like, the company, if you're lucky and it's successful, outgrows you over time. And the not your baby comes in different phases, right? And so in the beginning, like you have just a few people that work for you and you're just the dictator and like whatever you want happens. But that's like not scalable. And so you have to bring other people and they have other ideas and then other people like those other ideas better and they're like, Austin, you suck. Like, don't do this, don't get involved here, right? And so like that, you have to like give up. And so it's almost maybe like, it feels a bit like the giving tree in the sense that like you're just doing less and less and less as the business gets bigger. And in some ways, like if you're lucky and you've hired really good people who work there, that like they're better than you at all this stuff. And you're like, oh my gosh, like now people give me credit for all the amazing shit these 2,000 people do, which is cool. And then your job is to protect it, right? And you've got to be like, how does this not get broken? And how do you go through all these stages and make sure that it doesn't get, ruined? And so then, when you, see the other side of that and how, cultures can change inside companies, how things can differ, and like that, to some degree, is heartbreaking. And it's the natural state of stuff that it's like creative destruction and like, we don't make shampoo, like we're in tech and everything that we do is always going to change all the time. But I think that the parts that, I don't know, I guess like that I'm most proud of are like the lives changed by the business more than like, oh, look, we figured out how to do this or we, did all these crazy things technologically, but it's more like, we took a chance on this person and then they met their significant other and they like have kids and like their whole life trajectory was changed because you just were like, oh, I kind of like that guy in this interview. Like, let's try and see what happens. And so I think those things, like when that kind of falls apart and it's not magical like that anymore, like that's heartbreaking.
And so you would, not to push you further, but like, what's it like to look at Datto today from those days?
I mean, I don't know what Datto is today.
Unrecognizable, right?
So, it got sold, and as somebody else decided that they wanted to take it in different directions with different, values. And I was very clear when that happened that I was like, hey, I think you're making a mistake. And I like called them, and I like did stuff to reach out and be like, hey, I think you're making a mistake. And then I was like, by the way, I'm gonna like, wrote a letter and was like, hey, I think you're making a mistake, and posted on the internet about like, here are the things. And then, it's interesting because like the consequences of that, at least in my perspective, the consequences of that mistake become clear. And so then it's this case of like, time goes on and there's an opening and there's a chance to bring together those values and the people who like find that passion and like getting passionate about data backup, which is like the unsexiest thing on earth. And yet like at Datto, we had this, our thing was like, do your life's work. And I would go to these new hire trainings, and I would stand up and jump around and be like, here's why like working in a data backup company can be doing your life's work. And you can really feel it because like we make a product that makes people's lives better. It solves a problem that people have. Like we have stories all the time. They're like, I restored this stuff, and like, great, you fixed a thing. And so like that is awesome in a way that if we sold targeted advertising would not be. And yeah, I think that opportunity to like realize that like the special is the like doing your life's work and is the culture, and to potentially, you don't want to play the same song again, but like one that rhymes, like feels pretty good right now.
Yeah, and we'll get to that more because I want to hear more about that. David, how about you?
Well, you look back at it, and I remember when Arnie and I were talking about, selling, because we were at the point where it's like, okay, we got to do something. I mean, we were talking about is, hey, we got to rewrite this software, okay? Because you're really at that point where it's like, it becomes a battleship, and you can't turn it in the harbor anymore. So every time you do an upgrade, you're breaking 10 other things. So you really get kind of stuck a little bit. And it's really, that's time to do the rewrite. The problem with doing a rewrite is what would you do? You would take half your development team, put them in a different building altogether, and say, here's inputs, here's the outputs, do it again with all the new tools to do it better. And when you think about the cost of that, it's pretty expensive. You know, we weren't necessarily making a lot to the bottom line. We were growing quickly, but we didn't necessarily chase the EBITDA. So, you know, that was concerning to do that. And for me, that's what should have been done. And, you know, I got to be careful here because half the room maybe uses ConnectWise Manage. And, you know, it's like it should have been rewritten. I think the integrations to all of the different platforms and all the integrations that ConnectWise has is the reason it's still really a solid product. It has that network effect, so it's going to have some, you know, longevity from that standpoint. But I would say, you know, what the right thing, and, you know, when you look at it, you know, you tell the next person that bought it, you need to do this. This is what we should have done. And then they, you know, it's kind of like the same thing that Austin did. It's like, then they just don't listen. And it's a little frustrating because you see it, it's like, okay.
So are you saying Jason should have
Yeah,
rewrote
yeah,
it?
blame
where's
McGee.
the point where you're like, because Jason was here like not that long ago.
No, I would tell you, Jason didn't have any control. You know, he had his PE overlords that kind of wanted EBITDA to the bottom line. So I mean, that they just wanted to get the bottom line. So that's the dirty, you know, the dirty truth about it in some ways.
And can I follow that further? Is that part of the problem that we have today, is just chasing the almighty EBITDA to the bottom line? And what do y'all think?
I mean, yeah, to some degree, like if you don't invest in technology, your castle will erode, and that, you know, you're fighting the tide. And what happens, and it's actually interesting because like Michael was super instrumental that when Datto went and did the deal with Vista and we merged with Autotask, and the PE people appeared and they're like, you know, it would be amazing is if like less people work for you and you just made everything more terrible and you charged more for it. and Michael says, like, you know, if you borrow $1 million from the bank, this is, you know, a common thing, like you borrow $1 million from the bank, you owe the bank, but if you borrow $100 million from the bank owes you. And he's like, no, you don't understand, like these PE guys, they cannot have this fail. Like this must work for them, you know, and they don't know how to run this business. And they don't, you know, they don't want to screw it up in the sense of like, you know, have you explode or leave or do something. And so instead I kind of had to just go crazy mode back on them and be like, oh, I'm gonna just not, like we're just gonna not do those things. And it was weird. It was like, you know, a meeting with the Bobs in Office Space and they're just like, okay. And then they would just come back like a month later and be like, have you thought about doing all the bad stuff anymore? And you're just like, no, we're just not gonna do the bad stuff. And you can actually fight that cycle. And you can tell that story that's like, look, we're growing and we're doing well, and if you want us to like grow faster or try to make more money, like you gotta leave it to us to figure out how to do it. And like, I wanna keep all the cool snacks in the kitchen, so like don't come after it. And I wanna pay for everybody's healthcare, and I wanna, you know, and that unfortunately, like a lot of CEOs don't realize that they have that leverage because the PE firm comes in and they're like, well, we're the owners now. And like, you can be like, fine, you wanna go run it? Like, then they don't actually wanna do that. And so you have that leverage. But enough data has come forward that really shows that like, you know, the cut everything model doesn't produce like some grand win. And it will be super interesting over like this long-term time period of like, what are the exits? Because like the PE owners of ConnectWise and of Kaseya, like they did not buy these for like giggles. Yep. Like they would like to make money. And like, how would they do that? And it's like, well, they need to sell the business to someone else or take it public. And like neither of those two things have occurred, which means that like something's not working great. And so it will be interesting to see, you know, how they adapt and adjust, knowing that they need to make those changes and knowing, you know, the data has shown that like you can't just not invest in product.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a big challenge for the space, is the fact that it really started around 2010, where, you know, the past 15 years, there's been a lot of investment by private equity firms in MSP roll-ups, which I'm sure you guys have the phone rang off the hook, getting called weekly, monthly by all the different players that are out there, let alone all the private equity companies with a bag of cash that want somebody to go and do a new roll up as well, right? So, if you look at that, that 15 years of investment in this industrial strength, bulletproof model called managed services, if you run the business properly, it is based, I call it the AUM vault, right? Like if you're one of these big PE firms, you're sitting with $5 billion in cash, there's not a better, you get penalized by, like it's just that's how the money, how money works at that level. You get penalized for idle cash. Right. So why not take $1 billion and put it into, again, a roll up or some of the more mature software companies. But as Austin says, that's good. That's been good for a lot of us in the industry over the last 15 years. But we don't have a ServiceNow in this space, right? Like at the software level, we don't have, like you look at the global system integrators, the Accentures of the world, they've bought basically every Salesforce and ServiceNow integrator that's out there for multiples of revenue, and they're professional service companies, right? Like 3, 4, 5x revenue, and now you've got those businesses shifting as well, right? So is the global system integrator with now small business being larger than the enterprise space from a total addressable market, is this the next, like we have a lot of billion-dollar companies now in managed services, both on the software and the services side. So I mean, they can't stay in private equity forever. The private equity firms will want to see exits, and not an exit like Enable, where it's still owned basically by all the private equity firms, right? It's just kind of a retrade of this situation that they're in the first place. So I think that's like Joel, my partner is here, Joel Abramson. We ran like an MSP investor event a couple of weeks ago called TopDown Horizons, really looking at this. How do we bring the MSP message from Main Street to Wall Street? How do we educate, so that we have more early stage companies, early stage investors like TopDown, coming to the table, and also we have better places for the billion-dollar plus revenue companies that we've been producing in the industry.
I also think everything is changing, and get rid of the whole agentic AI component, just put that to the side. The fact that you can use a lot of AI tooling to build software allows you to build software faster than ever before. And so the number of people it takes to rewrite a ConnectWise is dramatically smaller. And computers are much, much faster, so you don't have to be as good at getting the database just right or some of these other pieces. And so seeing that percolate in the last 3 or 4 years, look at the number of new vendors that have shown up in MSP land. It's a ton. And that's good, that's healthy. And I hope to see more of that there are more people coming with new ideas, with new products that are looking at it and going, hey, this thing is stale, that hasn't moved forward enough.
You got it.
And they're pushing. And that pressure, even if you don't switch, Halo makes ConnectWise better because they're pushing and ConnectWise realize, we can't just raise our price 15% every year and hope everyone's happy with that. We need to actually keep the features moving. We need to keep improving the product. And so that pressure really hopefully should get this industry out of what felt like for a few years, it almost during the COVID time was stuck. Yeah. And now I feel that's kind of breaking up and things are starting to move forward.
So let's take that question and let's flip it to the MSP side of the house. Do you see the need for them to innovate? Is that coming? Or how would you take that same thought process and apply it to the MSPs here today?
I think the MSP business is a relationship business. And building a great relationship and a great connection with your customers is always the thing that separates the best MSPs from the ones that are struggling. And how you do that can be unique to you. And if your MSP looks exactly the same as all the other MSPs, then all you can compete on is price. But if you have a unique offering, if you have a unique story, if you have a unique relationship with your customers, that puts you in a differentiated position, which gives you room to charge more margin and to build a successful business.
Any other thoughts?
No.
Yeah, I think he nailed it there. Yeah, the whole landscape's going to change But the MSPs always figure it out, and I think, what Austin's saying is the tools will come forward for you guys to run more and more efficient businesses. You'll probably be, I think we used to have a rule of thumb where every tech had to be, you had a tech for every 200 devices you were managing. Well, that's gone up to like 500, and it's going to go up to 1,000. Everyone's going to be able to do more work because they're going to have better tools to help manage all of it. So I think you'll have maybe 3x the clients you have today with the same workforce. You'll be able to do more with less.
That's awesome. I want to shift the conversation to a why question. Mark, I'm going to start with you. All three of you have been successful. Why are you doing this again? Why are you, Mark, doing top-down? What's the rationale? What's the reason?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an evolution. If you like take SaaS as an example, the SaaS industry, right? Like, I mean, if you look at how that has propelled over the years, it's a lot of the successful operators have gone into the other side of the industry, right? Versus, as I said, just a couple of ex-bankers that now have a bag of money and they decide, okay, we're going to go in and start to really understand this managed services space. And I mean, you guys see it in board meetings, right? Like when the fund that's invested, they drop their junior guy in, or even one of their senior people. Like it's like we're talking Egyptian hieroglyphics, right? Like I mean, it's just basically that there's no flow to the conversation typically with them. So I just looked at it that we felt that the mission of TopDown is really trying to help elevate the industry, get us out of the AUM vault, the assets under management vault that we're sitting in, right, at the top end, but help definitely more early stage companies. And I think to Austin's point on you don't need 15 people to get product market fit and develop for 2 years, right? I mean, you can, in MSP, the distribution is there. If you've got a great leader with a great idea, right, through obviously the AI tools that are out there, vibe this, vibe that, there's definitely a pretty quick path to market as well today. So again, I guess the good news is you're going to see better products, hopefully. The bad news is you're going to see a lot more products because it's going to be a lot easier to obviously develop software in kind of this AI age for sure.
Yep, that's great. Austin, how about you? Why? Why are you doing Slide? Why are you doing the investments? Why?
Why? Because like I have red hair or had red hair, so I get sunburn on the beach. Like I can't just hang out there. Like I like doing stuff. Yeah. And I like doing all the things all the time all at once, which like is annoying, but like somehow I just can't not do it. I think that in the case of Slide, there was an opportunity where the technology had made a step change. And so like, while I'm like the tech nerd, there is like some accounting brain, and like I saw the math around solid state storage, and I'm like, oh, this is going to cross this tipping point, and you could build a BCDR product over top solid state. And like what that unlocks, like it's like, oh, well, what a big deal. You just replace hard drive with the other thing, it doesn't matter. But it's like, actually it changes everything. And so how you can start to design the product downstream of that gets really exciting and interesting. And then it turned out that like some people that get really excited about that happen to be doing nothing. And so they was like, hey, do you want to come like do really cool stuff and fun stuff again? And they're like, absolutely. And so that was like a chance to sort of build something. And you start down it and it's not clear that it's like, oh, we're going to launch on this date or with these features, but you get further along and then you're like, actually, I think we could build something that MSPs might like and appreciate, and I think that we could do it and have the same energy and joy and relationship with the partners and all of the things that made Datto fulfilling, like we could recreate that. And one, like that's fun because you get to test, like, is it luck or skill? And if I do it twice, like odds are it's more skill than luck. And so that's exciting. And then, coming back here and actually getting to serve the industry again, like, is awesome. For sure. And knowing that, like, the outcome can't be the same because y'all come burn my house down if that's the case. So like we have to target a different trajectory, but like to build something that's sustainable, that's like can exist without me in perpetuity, is very exciting. And so like those things are all motivating. And then, recently, I guess like the other piece, like I've gotten a lot more into like, how do I give the money away? Because like computers is actually like a cheap hobby compared to like yachts or something. And yeah, so like I bought a power plant and I'm turning it into a park, and that's gonna like cost like most of my net worth, which is wild. And will be like the most expensive private park ever built in history, which is also wild. But yeah, well, no, don't thank me till it's like done. Right now I can like make you sign a waiver and you can go tour an asbestos castle. But like, but when we get to the other side, it will be really cool. But I think like that idea, like I've created this enormous hole in the bucket, and it's like, oh, well now like there's a reason, for Slide to be successful, and it, creates value of like new dollars to give away. Which is also very exciting.
Will there be slides at this park?
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. There'll be like everything. Like, yeah.
Good.
Robot Wars.
That's a different business altogether.
Oh, okay. David, how about you? Why CyberFOX? Why'd you do it?
Well, I was actually retired for about.
Sluskin.
Huh?
That's Sluskin's
Yeah.
fault.
Where is he?
If maybe some of you heard the story. Slutskin calls me one night, but. I did some charity boards, and I got to be honest with you. Once you've been in our industry, you're kind of used to moving fast, and these charity boards are just so slow. And we'll just reconvene 4 months from now, and we'll discuss it then. And we forget what we talked about 4 months ago. So I did a few of those. I got really bored. Retirement is overrated. Just so you guys know, I figured out the best retirement is not to retire. Maybe you work 4 hours a day for 4 days a week. But I would say that it's. Is that good?
That sounds retired.
Well, Austin, you are 40 and I'm 64, so.
Okay.
But no, I enjoy, I've always owned a small business, and even ConnectWise, we're still considered a small, medium-sized business. And I enjoy helping, everyone in this room to kind of have success. So, building really good, inexpensive products, what we like to say, building a product that's 80% of the features of the expensive enterprise guys for 90% of the discount. That's kind of the goal. I enjoy, it's nice to have employees, these employees are buying houses, they're getting married, they're having kids. I feel like, that's a good thing to be doing in your life. So for me, I enjoy that aspect of it. My brother has this goal of creating 70,000 high-tech jobs in Tampa Bay. So I'm trying to all right, let me see if I can help him do that. That's a BHAG that he came up with when we sold ConnectWise. So, for me, it's enjoyable. It's a lot funner the second time around. I think you guys, a lot of us were white knuckling it there in the beginning. So I think we know kind of what's going on. It's just a little easier to navigate everything the second time around.
That's great. So I promised I would leave about 10 minutes or so for questions. So be thinking of your questions. I got one last one I'm going to ask. But be thinking of your questions, and we'll juggle the mics around, and would love to have the panel answer any questions you've got. So the last question I have, at least that I think, is the elephant in the room, which is one of us is being sued on this stage. Are we allowed to talk about that?
We can talk about whatever you want.
Let's talk about it.
What do you want to talk about? You can't,
Yeah, it's a generic question, I know.
As an investor in Slide, I'd really
No,
like to
no.
know.
All right. So first off, if you're baseline, hey, what's going on? I want to give a shout out to Dave Sobel. Did a great job
awesome
of actually doing the yeoman's work, and he realized that you got to pay $100 to get a PDF out of the Delaware court system, but he did actually get all the PDFs, and so there's some. I think Slide story is well told, and the other side story is told through those documents, and so that's a good place to start if you're trying to figure out, hey, what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. I can take it from there. What do you want to know?
Yeah, take it from there.
Okay, well, we didn't steal anybody's trade secrets.
What's their why for doing it? Right?
Well, who's suing you, first of all? Or can you not say their name?
No, I can say their name. So Datto, a subsidiary of Kaseya, has sued Slide for a variety of things, and one of those things is trade secrets. And we strongly believe that we did not take any trade secrets. So like, we think that they were mistaken. I think that, it's rare, but we have a lot of faith in the court system that we can tell the story and show what we did and show how we did it, and be very clear that like, look, our CEO is a lawyer, is the guy that wrote the non-competes for the people who worked at Datto. So this idea that somebody might be concerned we weren't surprised when this happened. And so from the get-go, we took steps, and the majority of that, or it's kind of this twofold process. And so on one side, the technology has changed, and the way what we built is meaningfully different, and where we're going is meaningfully different than anything that we've done in the past. And then on the second, we took precautions going into it to ensure that things were done properly and that people did not violate any of their agreements and are not going to reuse those trade secrets. And so while it makes a lot of noise, like the actually best part about this is that they wish to settle this quickly. So like, we're on target to go to trial in April, and we'll find out. But like, I feel very confident in the position that we're in because I know what we did, and like, we wouldn't have done this in some way. Like, we didn't want to take anything from anybody because that's not what Slide's about.
Yeah, makes sense. Does that satisfy you as an investor?
Yeah. You can ask more, like whatever you want to know.
Well, we'll leave it to the audience. How about that? We got a question right over here. We'll start bringing some mics around. It doesn't have to be just about that. Would love to. This is your chance to ask 3 founders of very pivotal companies any question you want. So here's our first, right over here.
Hey, Austin.
Howdy.
So, is this going to be in the Delaware jurisdiction? That this
Yes.
happens? Do they award you the attorney's fees should you prevail?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Michael Bass.
Michael in the back. We're not seeking any of that, is my understanding.
Okay.
We're
And
just seeking to have it be over. Would be
I was
great.
only asking just in case there was a party coming after that. But best of luck to you.
Yeah.
I know you prevail.
Thank you.
Party will be on the park.
Yeah. We'll have a party no matter what.
Surely we got questions. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. Because otherwise, I can tell you about the time we pushed the software update and bricked all the Datto appliances for 4 hours.
I have a question. You guys have all started over more than once, or at least once. And what's one big thing that you've learned that you would never do, that you could recommend to people that you would never do again? I mean, we ask these in different, not a regret necessarily, but just what would you recommend? Don't do this. Like, is there one thing, or?
I would never hire someone's wife or husband ever again. It gets sticky when you want to fire one of them.
I have a long list. Can start with don't get the book of stock certificates from the online thing and then write yourself only one of them, and find out you only own 1 share of your company later on. That was complicated to fix, so don't do that. I think on the more practical, don't spend a lot of time with people who show up like in the beginning and are like, I want to buy a zillion of your thing. And that generally, like, it almost never works out, and it's better to like incrementally build a relationship than like the person that calls and they're like, how many of your product fit on a pallet? Because I want to buy a ton of them. And you're like, okay, well, I don't even know who you are. But like, odds are like those just don't work. And so like, think about incremental success over like these like big leaps or huge whales. I am very bad at landing any of those, and so like much better step by step.
It's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and we write a monthly blog and podcast on called TopDown Outliers. The one actually before our event was called The Founder's Guide to Navigating Investors, And I would say that as a founder scaling a company, the people that you pick around on that cap table, around that boardroom table, can make or break your business single-handed. And as you guys and gals in the room, I mean, we're mostly all entrepreneurs here. Being an entrepreneur, there's easier things to do, right? Like there's better pay, less hours, less stress, et cetera, et cetera. So piling that on top of that, bad early stage investors are obviously definitely, and then the flip side of it as well, right? Like when you actually bring in the larger PE firm, you actually have to understand how to navigate them. Bring in a good CFO or have a good financial advisor, mentor, whoever that can help you navigate that part of your business, because it is a business in and of itself, dealing with investors for sure. So I would say that's the thing that you just have to learn in a lot of ways the hard way. But I think as you get on to the next venture and then the next venture after that, you get better at it as well.
Yeah, I think picking your partners and picking who you do business with is always like the most important thing, and understanding that business is relationship, it's conversation, and that you have more leverage than you think you do in almost all these cases. And then one other never do is don't buy a Slurpee machine for the office. They break down and make a sticky mess all the time. They never work.
And I think know your personality as well as the CEO. Like your job is to attack and defend outwardly, right? And get if you're an aggressive personality, like a deal maker, et cetera, probably you're not necessarily the best person to manage millennials and Gen Z and kind of this next generation of employee either, right? So definitely having the COO that is kind of the yin to your yang is critically important. I think to Austin's point on picking the right business partners obviously as well is really critical for sure.
It's great.
I would say for one thing I remember that we used to do in the early years, and can't really get away with it anymore, but Microsoft's doing it, Google's doing it. We actually had this little half-hour IQ test. I took it, I got like a 62. Arnie took it, he got like a 64. And so we basically said, hey, let's just hire everyone that takes this test and does better than us. And that was actually really a successful little thing we did, because we got a lot of people that we hired that were smarter than us. And they were able to kind of like make the company really grow fast. So, you get some people that are a little, I don't want to say slower, but they can really, really, trip the whole organization. So that was something we did. I wouldn't bring it back now because it's like that's no longer acceptable potentially in this day and age. I can't discriminate against stupid people anymore.
You can.
I think there's a question right over here. Yeah, we'll grab that one.
So I just want to ask, how did you guys know when you were ready to sell your company? Was there one thing that kind of tripped you to do that, or was it a combination of things?
You want to go first, or you want?
Well, I wasn't the CEO, Arnie was, so it was kind of his decision on what we did. I think what happened was we weren't intending to sell. It was just someone came along and basically, offered us a lot of money. We got a little older. Our wives were, getting a little antsy about how much we were working. So, one of those things I think happens. It was just kind of like, I don't know, maybe this is not a bad place to go. I think if we'd had to do it all over again, we probably wouldn't have done it. We probably would have waited a little longer and done some other things. But yeah, I would say that you kind of know because they come knocking at your door and, it's kind of like it's an offer too good to refuse.
So we're actually on a technical basis sold Datto a few times. And so the scenario, the first one was when did we do the Vista deal? Because that was the first time we sold Control. And in that case, we were getting ready to go public, and I met with a whole bunch of public company CEOs. And they all were like, I hate this. And I hate being public company CEO. And so I was like, oh, well, that doesn't sound great. And at the time, I owned the majority of the company. And the thing is that if you sell to private equity, they just like cut you a check. And so it was like I could get like an enormous multi-$100 million check. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting too. And so kind of went down that story, met people, and some of the private equity people are like, actually, I'm the devil. I'm a terrible person, and I will want terrible things for your business, but I will give you real money. And in some ways, it's actually refreshing because like at least they're honest. But so did that transaction, and the scenario that was interesting to me there was that, like, in learning new things, was this merger of Datto and Autotask, and that there were going to be 800 additional people added to our 800 people. And as the CEO was like, ooh, that sounds like an adventure, and like something new to take on. And so did that, like, got the check, and like that was wild because like I have an ATM receipt from it. It was kind of, they just put it in your checking account. But yeah. I know. So then we did that process, and a thing happened that Andrew Stewart, who ran our UK operations, and was somebody that I knew pretty well the company. And one of the things I was actually very proud about in selling the business is that you get to give a lot of money to your employees. So all of the other stockholders get cash. And so we made all these millionaires at Datto, and like I know Arnie was very proud of all the ConnectWise people who made money, and so it's like everybody's been working on this for years and years and years, and you like convert that, the stock options that everyone's like, I don't know what these are worth, and it's like, congratulations, they're worth like real lottery tickets. Yeah. So Andrew he'd been at the company, had a lot of stock options, made a bunch of money, and then within a month or two of the transaction, he passed away tragically. Like on a business trip. And with that, and I was relatively close and like went out to the funeral and like met his parents, and he came from like the middle of nowhere, Scotland, and all this stuff, and realized just that like you don't know when your like ticket is gonna get punched. And it's one of those things that like builds on you over time. Again, I actually point to Michael because he came into my office and he was like, "You are the most unhappy 37-year-old billionaire I've ever met." And you just sort of realize, like, I don't want this to be the only thing that I've done. And so the process of quitting actually felt like the most selfish thing ever that I had ever done. And it truly was like entirely selfish. And so that was like really weird and personal. And then, like, if you were thinking about like the next time Datto is sold as it goes public, and then like that's just like cool, we could do that, and like felt like you achieved manifest destiny. And then finally on the acquisition out of the public markets, is really a lesson in like what matters in capitalism and like the mechanics around being a public company and how your valuations are decided, and when you end up with a mismatch between what the public values your business and what the actual value of the business would be based on its sort of underlying performance, you become vulnerable that someone sees that delta and is like, I could acquire this on the cheap. Like you have made yourself into the bargain bin, and you have no control over that. And so that was like a really bumpy and surreal ride, and I think a little bit of like groupthink in the sense that everyone's like, are you really sure we should do this? And nobody really wanted to like push the button to blow it up. And like there are probably ways that it could have blown it up. And obviously like it didn't. And it's unclear, like certainly from a financial perspective, like it worked out at a personal level, but I think that in the long term, it's not the outcome or trajectory that I would have wanted for the business. And so like then it becomes a lesson learned and you move forward in life. But
yeah, I think what you bring on investors and you're on a treadmill ultimately for an exit, right? Whether you like it or not.
Yeah, you're
right?
committed to the end of your business.
Yeah, because they're 5-year cycle typically that the funds want to be in. Like some of them obviously maybe extend to 7 to 10 years, but that, I think more from a standpoint of you running an MSP, when is the right time to sell. It's a really hard business, as we all know, to run day in, day out, right? So it's probably the point when it's not enjoyable anymore. Maybe you've lost your key lieutenant, lost a couple of big clients, whatever, and then you just basically have to, you have to really build a data room, mirror get advisors to get you in a position that you can actually maximize your exit, right, as well. Because again, the biggest challenge for a lot of you folks out in the room is the offers that you're getting, you earn an income in 3 years in your MSP, right? Like, so it's you really got to hate your MSP to sell for a price that you make in personal income in the business over 3 to 4 years, and that's kind of the challenge. On the software side, obviously it's different metrics, and typically when you start to get in that enterprise value between 100 to 200 million, that's the optimal place that the most buyers are, right? Like the strategics, you're going to have definitely software companies that'll buy you, PE firms that'll buy you. What you start to get over 200 million, every 100 million beyond that, the buyer pool falls off a cliff, right? So that has to play into your decision making as well, right? So so then to bring it back to real math, you're running a company today. Your ThreatMate as an example, the guys that they're in the room, they scale that business to a $10 million business over the next couple of years. That business now enterprise value is north of 100 million. There's going to be probably a recap or potentially a decision that a company like them would have to make at that stage, right? And you just got to understand like the stage you're at in life and business. Again, you're a young guy, so it might be an optimal time just to what we were talking about, get a bunch of cash off the table and start something else a couple of years after you get through the integration period, right? It is nice having your first exit, getting cash for something that you've killed yourself with on over a decade or whatever number of years that it's been.
Yep. So this has been the fastest panel. I knew we would be up like that. It feels like it. So we are out of time. But I just want to say, David, Austin, Mark, all three of you, thank you for just sharing your thoughts, for being open, transparent, letting us learn from you. I appreciate all of this. And I don't know what's next. Where's Danielle? Is it party time?
Right here. All right. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.